Narcissism. Everyone knows the word. Almost no one knows how it actually feels. Because when you finally see it, you're already inside it. It didn't feel wrong. It felt right. More right than anything you had experienced before. Someone who seemed to understand you completely, who made you feel seen in a way that was almost disorienting. The attention was constant. The connection felt rare. And somewhere in the middle of it, you didn't decide to trust them. You just did. And then something shifted. Slowly. So slowly, you didn't have a name for it. Just a feeling. Something off. A quiet unease that started showing up between the good moments. A version of yourself you didn't fully recognize. A confusion you couldn't explain because from the outside, everything still looked perfect. That's the hardest part. Not what happened, but that it felt like love the entire time. So how do you miss something that was right in front of you? There's a kind of confusion most people never explain clearly. Not the kind where something was obviously wrong. The other kind. The one that felt right. The one that had real moments, real connection, real warmth, that you can still remember and still, somewhere inside it, you started to lose track of yourself. That's the part people struggle to understand, because from the outside, it didn't look like a mistake. It looked like something real. This isn't about narcissist as a category. It's not a checklist, not a set of traits. This is about something more precise. Why it feels like love while it's happening. Why the signs that seem obvious later weren't obvious at all. And why the people this happens to aren't naive. They're the ones who feel the most. Understanding this doesn't change what happened, but it changes what it meant. And once that changes, you don't just see the past differently. You start seeing the pattern as it happens. Think back to the beginning. There was a version of them that felt almost too good, too attentive, too aligned with everything you needed. They remembered things no one else did, small details, the kind that made you feel seen, important, chosen. And for a moment, it felt like this was it, like this was what it was supposed to feel like. And you believed it. Then something happened, not big, not dramatic, just the first real tension, a disagreement, a shift. And then they came back different, softer, more present than before, more attentive than the situation even required. And that felt like proof. Proof that they cared. Proof that they chose you, even when things got difficult. So you stayed. What you didn't see was that both moments were connected, the beginning and what came after. They weren't opposites. They were part of the same pattern, and you were already inside it. That beginning wasn't random. That intensity, that attention, the feeling that this person was different, rare, almost too good to be real. There's a name for that. Love bombing. Not as a metaphor, as a pattern. An overwhelming level of attention that feels special. Because it is. And your brain responds to it the way it responds to any powerful reward. With trust. With attachment. With the sense that this matters. That this is worth protecting. And by the time that intensity shifts, you're already invested. Then something else begins. Not constant affection, not consistent distance, but both, back and forth, closeness, then withdrawal, connection, then confusion. And this is where it changes, because your brain doesn't attach strongest to consistency. It attaches to variation, unpredictable reward, moments of warmth, followed by distance. The good moments don't just feel good, they feel like relief. And relief, after tension, creates something deeper than comfort ever could. This is why it becomes hard to leave. There's a name for that too: intermittent reinforcement, and over time, that pattern creates something even stronger, because every rupture, followed by reconnection, pulls you in deeper. Every moment of tension, followed by relief, reinforces the bond, not despite the cycle, because of it. This is what's called a trauma bond, and this is where it becomes confusing, because it isn't fake. Not completely. There are real moments, real connection, real warmth, and your mind tries to hold both, the good and the inconsistency. That confusion? It's not weakness. It's what happens when something feels real, but isn't stable. You remember those moments. Not the obvious ones, the small ones, the comment that didn't sit right, but was quickly turned into a joke, the plan that changed. Again, with a reason that almost made sense, the argument where you somehow left feeling responsible for something you couldn't fully explain. You noticed. That's the part most people miss. You did notice, but instead of stopping, you explained it. You told yourself it wasn't a big deal, that you were overthinking, that there was probably a reason, so you stayed. And those moments kept stacking. Not all at once, just enough to manage, until managing it became normal. That's why it's so hard to interrupt. Because from the inside, it doesn't look like a pattern. It looks like isolated moments, each one reasonable, each one explainable. And the relationship still had enough warmth, enough connection, enough of what you needed to make leaving feel harder than staying. And slowly, something else changed. You did. Your expectations, your standards, your sense of what was normal. Without noticing it, you started adapting, managing their reactions, anticipating their moods, adjusting yourself to keep things stable. And somewhere in that process, you stopped tracking your own experience. You started confusing relief with happiness, and without deciding to, you built your internal world around someone else's, not in one moment, in all the small ones, the ones that were always easy to explain away. You didn't miss the signs, you saw them, but by the time they appeared, you were already attached. That beginning, the intensity, the attention, the way it felt at its best, became your reference point, a baseline. So everything that came after was measured against it. The distance felt temporary. The inconsistency felt explainable. The good moments felt like returns, and your brain kept waiting for it to go back to what it was. That's not weakness. That's how attachment works. So the shift isn't about seeing more. It's about seeing differently. Because what felt like connection was intensity. What felt like safety was relief. What felt like love was unpredictability. And those are not the same thing. So the question changes. Not, do they care? But, what is this actually built on? Consistency or variation? Because real connection doesn't depend on relief. It doesn't disappear and come back stronger. It stays. And the most important shift is quieter. It's returning to your own experience, not their mood, not the state of the relationship, not whether things feel calm or chaotic. You, what you actually feel when nothing needs to be managed. That's where clarity starts, and that's where the pattern breaks. Understanding this changes something. Not what happened, but what it meant. Because the confusion was never the problem. It wasn't poor judgment, it wasn't failure. It was your mind doing exactly what it was built to do. Attach, protect that attachment, and struggle to see clearly from inside it. That's not weakness. That's human. And the people this happens to aren't the ones who feel too little. They're the ones who feel deeply, who wanted it to be real badly enough to explain away the moments that said it wasn't. And that attachment, the part that made it hard to leave, wasn't the problem. It was your capacity for real connection, used against itself. That's why it felt so convincing, because parts of it were real. The connection, the moments, the feeling. But real is not the same as healthy, and that difference is everything. Because now you can see it, and once you see it, you don't just understand the pattern. You stop repeating it. It wasn't love, but it wasn't nothing either. And that's what makes it so hard to process. Because dismissing it completely wouldn't be true. There were real moments, real connection, real parts of you that showed up fully inside it. What wasn't real was the stability, the safety, the version of the relationship that only existed in the good moments, the version you believed it could become. You weren't wrong to want that. You weren't foolish to believe it. You were responding to something that was designed, not always consciously, but effectively, to feel exactly like that. And the attachment it created matched the depth you brought into it. That wasn't the problem. Your capacity was never the problem. The pattern was. And now you can see it, how it begins, how it holds, why it feels the way it feels. And that changes something, not into cynicism, not into distance, into clarity. The kind that doesn't stop you from feeling deeply. It just makes sure that the next time something feels like love, you know how to see what it actually is. If this explains something you've lived through but never been able to name, tell me in the comments. I genuinely like to know what resonated. To continue this understanding, watch the next video here. And to understand human behavior at a deeper level, subscribe to Decoded Way.